right. Now, yesterday, we're on page 7, I think 780. Page 780. And yesterday, we had been speaking about the cloud covering the what do you call it? So there's a few points that we want to see over here. Yesterday, we spoke about the Levim and the idea that they were initiated into the service by being shaved. Remember, we spoke about that they were shaved. They shaved all the hair on their body. And hair represents all the excesses of life, that they have to do away with the excesses, but that there are certain parts of the body where the hair is not shaved, because even when you are involved in communal service, you can't neglect your own family. You have to make sure that you don't neglect your own family. There's actually a beautiful story of Moshe Feinstein. I'll get to you once again. Moshe Feinstein was. Have you heard of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein? He was essentially the halachic decider of the Jewish people in lives. Died in 1985. There were about 250,000 people at his funeral. I was there. Moshe Feinstein. I was at his funeral. There were 250,000. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. There were 300,000 people. There was even a secular policeman there. There was a secular policeman who was overheard saying, "If I knew there would be this many people at my funeral, I would drop dead on the spot." So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was essentially the halachic decider of Jewish people. Now, his son, Rabbi Reuven, is the head of a yeshiva in New York, also one of the leaders today. He's one of the leaders of the generation. And when his son, Rabbi Reuven, was making a bar mitzvah for his son, in other words, Moshe Feinstein's grandson, so he said Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was not able to be at the bar mitzvah because there was a meeting, some sort of meeting of the leading Torah committee, and Rabbi Moshe Feinstein couldn't be at his son's bar mitzvah, at his grandson's bar mitzvah. Somebody asked his son, Rabbi Reuven, "How did you feel about the fact that your father wasn't at the bar mitzvah?" So he said, "Look, it was obviously hard for me, but my father has communal obligations. He's carrying the Jewish people on his shoulders, essentially, and I appreciate the fact that he wasn't able to be there. If he wasn't there, he has a good reason to be there, but I also know that my father loves me. And if he couldn't be there, then he wanted to be there, he just couldn't be there." So the interviewer said to him, "How did you know your father loved you?" So he said, "Well, first of all, when I was a kid, I used to go up to the Catskills every summer, and my father had a regular learning session with my father. And once a day there was a hay wagon that came in to deliver something to the camp, and I liked to get a ride on that wagon. And one day the wagon came in a little earlier than normal, and I was in the middle of learning with my father, and my father said to me, 'The wagon's here, go ride on the wagon, we'll make up the learning later,' because he knew that I enjoyed it." That was number one. Number two, we always had very big people, very big rabbis, Jewish activists were always at our home. For Shabbos, they're always with us, because my father, so many people, was very in demand. But no matter who was at our home for Shabbos, I was the youngest child. No matter who the high official was, I always sat next to my father on Shabbos. My father always sat me next to me. Number three, when we were living in New York, in the morning it was very chilly. And my father would wake me up in the morning. It was very cold in the apartment in winter. And my father would take my pants, and he would put my pants on the radiator to warm them up. And then he would dress me under the blanket, so that I shouldn't have to suffer from the cold in the house. He would dress me under a blanket. So I know my father loved me. So if the father couldn't be there because of communal obligations, it wasn't because he had his priorities confused. It's because he obviously couldn't be there. That's a very important lesson for people, what you're involved in life, especially if you're involved in the pursuit of things that are not communal obligations. For example, money. Make sure I get a kid, a story about a guy who's a lawyer, and he gets a phone call one day, and he says, "Hi, who is it?" He says, "His dad, it's me, it's Yitzi." He says, "Everything okay?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Where are you?" He said, "I'm at the park across the street from your office." He says, "Why are you calling me?" He says, "Dad, look, I've been trying to talk to you for the last 3 weeks. And for the last 3 weeks, you're always busy. You never have time to talk to me. But I notice that whenever your phone rings, that you always have time to answer. And you talk to people on the phone. So I figured the best way to talk to you is by calling you on the phone." So that's an important lesson in life. An important lesson in life is that you're, there's another kid who was asked by his father, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" He said, "An airplane pilot." So he said, "Why?" He says, "Because your dad, you're always traveling. Maybe that way I'll get to spend a little more time with you." That's not something you want to hear from your kid. And there was the other kid who always used to play. He used to go visit old Mr. Murphy next door. And he would do errands for Mr. Murphy and everything else. And one day his father said to you, "Why do you do it?" So he says, "He pays me." He says, "Well, what does he pay you?" He says, "He pays me attention." It's not what you want to hear from your father, from your kid. Right? And therefore you have to, that's what the Torah is teaching you. Make sure you got your priorities straight. Okay? Now, Take a look. Somebody had a question over there. Go ahead.
Actually, I was interested in what you said about the hair representing excess.
Yes. What we had mentioned yesterday was the idea that the Leviim, who are put into the divine service, so the hair is something that we don't really, you can see, some people could live very well without it, and whether by choice or otherwise. But hair is regarded as excess. We cut the hair. In Jewish life, hair is generally short for men, especially. Hair is short. First of all, you have halachic problems. If you have too much hair right on top, so then it becomes a separation between the tefillin and the head. You don't have to shave your head down, but it shouldn't be that the tefillin is sitting on a layer bouncing around, as opposed to it should be sitting properly on the hair, number one. Number two, we mentioned the idea that the hair as the excess represents, you could cut your hair without it being painful. And the hair represents the excesses of life that the Leviim are going to be now controlling themselves not to be involved in.
Right. I was wondering how that applied to the Nazir.
Excellent question. The reason the Nazir grows his hair, another very good, those are from last week's parts, the reason the Nazir grows his hair is not to show that, to the contrary, the Nazir is abstained from wine. He's growing his hair because he's showing neglect for his physical appearance as well. That means he doesn't groom himself. He's not allowed to comb. He's not allowed to pull any hair out. Therefore, he can't comb his hair. It shows ignoring his grooming as opposed to being involved in the excess. To the contrary, the Nazir is the beard. Kabbalistically, there are two reasons for that we don't shave our beards. The first reason is the basic reason, according to halacha, which is that a Jewish man is not allowed to run a blade on his face. So there are basically five points on the face, which are approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We don't know exactly where they are, and therefore the halakha, and since we're not allowed to run an open blade over those 5 points, so we don't shave with a razor at all. That's why we let the beard grow. Now, you can use a scissors action. The reason behind it, I think somebody asked, Nathan, did you ask yesterday in the other class why we don't use the razor? Somebody just asked recently, one of the ideas, the basic idea about not using a razor is, somebody asked yesterday, I think, it was one of the rights of the idol-worshipping priests. That's what the commentaries explain, and therefore we don't follow their rights. They'd use a blade. The monks always were clean shaven, often had, they're even called in Hebrew, they're called a galach. A priest is called a galach. A galach legaleach is to shave, because they were shaved clean. They were shaved clean. And one of the ideas here is, first of all, there's a halachic concern. Always, no matter how spiritual we get, gentlemen, there's always a halachic concern first. First, the letter of the law, then we worry about the spirit of the law. The letter of the law says that you can't run a blade over your face. A scissors action is permissible, and a hair remover, a chemical hair remover, is permissible. So for some men, use a shaver. Now, a shaver is a spinning head that has a grid. So if the hair is between the grid and then you got a spinning blade cutting it against the grid on the shaver, so then it's really a scissors action, just an electric scissors action, which is perfectly permissible. The problem with some shavers is that some shavers are even called electric razors, because the way they work is the blade, the spinning blade, actually pushes out a little bit higher than the grid, and it's really chopping the hair out of the face as opposed to cutting it in a scissors action. Those types of shavers are problematic from a halachic point of view. There's also a chemical. There's a sulfur-based chemical powder which frum guys use who don't want to use any razor at all. Often frum yeshiva guys. You ever smell that? When my brother came back from yeshiva, he had gone off to yeshiva to become real frum. So he came back home, and I remembered periodically in the house, I didn't know we had a regular three-level house in Chicago, and periodically there was a terrible smell in the house, and I didn't know what it was coming. It would happen periodically. Then I realized it was happening every Friday when my brother went down to the basement to take his weekly shave. He'd put this stuff all over his face, and you wash it off, and the stuff is sulfur. It smells like you're at the Dead Sea. And the whole house is permeated with this odor, and I didn't know what was it. It annoys you, all of a sudden you're trying to eat supper, and all of a sudden you get the smell. Where is that coming from? And I realized it was happening every Friday when my brother would go down for his weekly shave. It gives you a great shave, and sometimes if it shaves off a couple layers of skin too, it burns. It burns like sulfur. And if you have any cuts or anything, it's not a great experience. So, but that is the idea behind not shaving with a razor. Now the beard has a certain Kabbalistic idea that the beard is considered, it's called in Kabbalistic terms, the Dikna Kadisha, the holy beard. And therefore, there are those who don't touch their beards at all. You find by Chabad that they won't touch the beard at all. There are many who won't shave. They try to curl it up underneath, and they don't shave the beard. Now, the beard, the idea of the beard on a deeper level is we now know with scientific instruments that hair is hollow. If you put a strand of hair under a microscope, you'll see that ultimately it's hollow. The hair is hollow.
Fiber, that's how it absorbs water.
Right, and it's referred to in Kabbalistic terms as the tzinoros, the conduits, which spread the influence. So there is a Kabbalistic depth to the beard. What do you call it? Now there's a more basic idea, also a deeper idea, but I think it more applies to us, and it goes back to the Levim as well about this idea of not shaving the face. You see, one of the commentaries points out, Rabbeinu Bechaya, one of the classic commentaries, who was a disciple of the Ramban. You've heard of Nachmanides. He was one of Nachmanides' disciples. So Rabbeinu Bechaya says like this. You see, we have five senses. A human being has five senses. We have a sense of smelling, hearing, tasting, touching, and seeing. Now, those five senses are all concentrated right in this area over here. If you stop and think about it, sense of sight, sense of hearing, sense of smelling, sense of tasting, and the sense of touch. Because your tongue is the most sensitive touching organ in the body. If you ever have a splinter, you can't touch it with your finger, your tongue, right? Because your tongue is much more sensitive. The sensors at the tip of the tongue actually magnify the thing. That's why if you have a cavity and you touch it with your tongue, you think you got a cave in there. You know, and when you look at it, when you see the dentist's picture, just like a little hole, your tongue actually magnifies it. If you're trying to reach the edge of a Scotch tape and you can't find the edge of Scotch tape, so those who are sophisticated put it in their mouth in order to find the edge where the Scotch tape, right? Is that true? That's where the Scotch, because the tongue is very sensitive. Now, those five senses are right in this area. So the Rabbeinu Bechaya says as follows. He suggests the following. The prohibition of shaving with a razor in Torah terms is called hashchasa. Hashchasa means total destruction, removal, total doing away with. When you shave with a shaver, you don't get as smooth a shave. You shave with a razor, with the cream, and you shave with a razor, you get a much smoother shave. That idea that Rabbeinu Bechaya says the Torah is trying to tell us, don't shave with a razor. That means Judaism is not about doing away with your senses totally. We are not a religion of asceticism. We are a religion of using our senses, but controlling them, not doing away with our senses. And therefore, we don't shave with the razor symbolically the area of the five senses, that we're not doing away with our senses. We're not priests. We're not Catholic priests. Judaism does not believe in that. And therefore, the idea behind it is that we make use of it. That's what the commentaries explain. I was once a little kid. I walked into I wanted to buy my dad a Father's Day gift, or a birthday gift. I forgot what it was. So I walked into the local Jewish pharmacy. They weren't religious. We were raised Shomer Shabbos. And it was in the middle of winter. I had my ski cap on. And I walk in, and I said to the lady, I think I was about 11 years old, 10 years old. I said to the lady, I want to buy my dad something, something for shaving. So the lady's Jewish, and she looks at me and says, well, does your father use a brush? Meaning a blade. Does your father use a brush? I said, well, I think so, because I know my father used to use his brush to clean out his shaver. So I said, well, I think so. And as I said it, I pulled off my ski cap because I was getting warm. I had my yarmulke underneath. So she looked at me. She goes, no, your father doesn't use a brush. She saw the yarmulke. She says, your father doesn't use. She gave me some sort of cologne. My brother went to buy my mother. My brother, he's the one we don't talk about. He bought my mother chewing tobacco for Mother's Day. Yeah, he thought she'd appreciate it. The ball players all chewed tobacco, so he thought he's the one we don't talk about. He's a rabbi. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what about, I heard that also the beard covers up the weakest point in your body, the neck, and it connects
There is an idea that the beard. There's an idea that I don't know about that, but there is an idea that the beard covers up the jaws, which are used in eating, which is the most animal behavior of a human being, a physical behavior, and therefore it covers up that. There's something about that, but to cover the jaws a little bit while we eat. There is something about that, but I feel that the other, which all of which is valid. It's all valid. I just feel that the other idea is a good reminder for us that Judaism doesn't say deprive. Judaism says control. That's a very, very important lesson always. Okay, now let's take a look. Take a look at verse Perek Yud, Perik Yud Pasuk Beis. Okay, it's on page. I'm sorry, I went too far. Perik Ches Pasuk Chafei, 825. 825. In here, it starts on page 776. It says like this: Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor. Towards the bottom of page, 3 lines from the bottom of page 776. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor. God says to Moshe the following: Zos asher laLevim. This is the what you should. This is regarding the Levites. Mi ben chomesh ve'esrim shana v'mala, from 25 years on and on. Yovo litzvot tzova ba'avodas ol moed. At 25 years old, they begin the service. Now, Rashi right here points out, if you take a look at the left column of Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom. Mi ben chomesh ve'esrim, left column, 2 lines from the bottom. It says Rashi, mi ben chomesh ve'esrim, at 25 years old. Uvemokom acher omer, there's another verse previously that says mi ben shloshim shana, that they started the service at 30 years old. So it seems like the Torah is contradicting itself, which obviously it can't possibly be. Ha ketzad, how do you reconcile these 2 seemingly contradictory verses? Mi ben esrim v'chomesh balilmod halacha, at 25 years old he comes to study avoda, to learn the service in the Beis HaMikdash. V'lomed chomesh shanim. He's got to get his undergrad, right? 5 years plus a year of his to get his master's, right? I mean, it's no less than any other area of scholarship. So first he has to learn. He has to study the laws. There are a lot of laws in the Beis HaMikdash. Uben shloshim shana oved, and at 30 years old he begins the divine service. At 30 years old he begins the divine service. Mikan letalmid shelo rasa ben yafa b'mishnasa b'chomesh shanim sheshuveino roeh. So from here we have a principle that a disciple who has studied for 5 years and just doesn't seem to make a breakthrough, he's not going to make that breakthrough. Okay, that's difficult. That's a different subject, exactly how to make that determination. But the Torah is telling you that there were 2 stages for Levi. First, he had to learn what you were doing. Now, what happens when he serves? Bottom line on page 776. Umi ben chamishim shana yoshuv mitzvah ha'avoda. And at 50 years old, he is retired, mandatory retirement at 50. Velo ya'avod od. He does not serve anymore. At 50 years old, the strength starts to diminish. From 30 to 50, a person at his peak strength. At 50, the physical strength starts to diminish. So what does this Levi do who's now 15 years old? We don't just put him out to pasture. What does he do? Vishere says echav be'ohel moed. He serves his brother. He serves with his colleagues in Ohel Moed. Lishmor mishmeres. How does ArtScroll translate it? To safeguard the charge. Va'avoda lo yavod. He doesn't serve kachatas levim mishrasim. That's what you should do for the Levim and their watches. Now comes along the Rashi, and Rashi says, so what does he do? Take a look at the right column on page 778, 2 lines from the top. And then we'll try to understand what's really going on here. Says Rashi, right column at 778, right column, 2 lines from the top. Velo yavodod. Says Rashi, what doesn't he do? Avodas masa bakasef. He no longer carries the heavy things on his shoulders. Aval chozerhu l'ni'ilas she'orim. He goes to lock the gates. L'shir, to sing, velito nagolos, and to load the wagons. But he doesn't carry things on his shoulder. Okay? Now, one of the commentaries points out it's a very interesting thing. Okay, you have the basic command of the Torah. 25 years are into the service, 50 years old, you're retired from the heavy labor, turn that over to the youngsters. You take care of locking the gates, you do the singing in the base of the Levim, sing in the Beis HaMikdash. The commentaries, there are sources that say that just hearing the Levim sing in the Beis HaMikdash requires a person to do tshuva, which obviously means it sounded somewhat different than music nowadays, certainly rap. The Levim, rap was meant, the Levim and the Beis was meant to inspire you to be good. It was, we're not getting political, I'm just being real. Sometimes you hear the rap. What's that?
There are rappers like the Moral Technique or Nas or Loki or Kala who speak about knowledge and learning.
Yeah, I'm sure. We'll put that into the base of English soon. But the classic rap, which gets you to go and break a car windshield, or shoot a cop. That's what I'm talking about.
That's gangster rap, which evolved.
Gangster. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about.
It's a specific subset.
Okay. I just brought up as an example, but whatever it is, the Levim singing in the base of English should actually inspire you to do tshuva. The beauty of their singing could actually there is a very deep spiritual level. It's like when you hear in shul on L'chododi sometimes Friday night. So I think that everybody is touched by hearing L'chododi, unless you're sleeping, which other people are doing in shul on Friday night. You're tired, listen, but the L'chododi does move many of us. If you hear a good, if you hear a good tune. But the idea here is as follows. One of the commentaries points out, the Levim are people who are involved in the divine service. There are people who are involved in religious service, and sometimes in life, when you get religious fervor can sometimes carry you a little further than it really should. Sometimes a person gets so religiously fired up that he forgets he's living in a world with other people, and he becomes what I call a religious Mr. Magoo. He leaves a trail of disaster behind him in his religious pursuits. And do you remember Mr. Magoo was this cartoon character who could barely see, and everywhere he goes, people are behind him. There's a trail of disaster. And sometimes a person gets so fervent about his religion that he forgets that he's living in a world with other people, and it has to be controlled. And I'll tell you in a second. And so the Levi, at 50 years old, what does he do? He's involved in what Rashi calls ne'ilas she'arim, closing the gates. That means with maturity in life, you learn how to turn it on and how to turn it off. You know when to close the gates. A person has to know sometimes the nature of religion. See what happens, they once did an experiment in a college with secular Jewish students. They told them, draw a picture, I think of 7 or 10 items that represent Judaism. So what did they draw? They drew a Sefer Torah, and they drew a menorah, and they drew a mezuzah, and they drew tefillin. They drew 10 items of the thing. Nobody drew a picture of somebody picking up somebody who's fallen on the ground. Nobody drew a picture of somebody putting money in a pushka. Nobody drew a man-to-man relationship. Because when we think of religion, we think of a shofar. Right? You think of a menorah, right? That's what religion. You think of a religious representation. You have to remember that Judaism is two-dimensional. Judaism is man to God. Judaism is man to man, man to your fellow man. So sometimes a person, because they want to be so devoted, their devotions show themselves, they manifest themselves more in their man to God than man to man, because that's more of an identifiable religion. So for example, if a guy is sitting on a quiet plane, true story, guy sitting on a quiet plane, it's the first day of the month of Elul, and he davens, and it's about 4 a.m, and he puts on his tefillin, and he davens shachris, and then he decides to carry out the Jewish tradition of blowing a shofar on the first month of Elul, right? So the plane, they're sitting on a plane, and all of a sudden, nowadays, there's no question you can get arrested. There's no question. A guy blows a shofar up. That's why I call a religious Mr. Magoo. You kind of panic you could cause on a plane with something like that. Or a guy told me, this is a guy, could you just imagine? The joke of it all is that one of the verses associated, there's a pasuk that says, when it comes to doing tshuva, Uru yesheni mishenaschem. Awake, O sleepers, from your slumber. And he fulfilled that one to the letter of the law. Can you imagine being on a plane and somebody blows a shofar? And it's I could just imagine. I heard that, I was laughing so hard. All right, so then I heard about another guy. Another guy was this guy, they told me he was a student here in the yeshiva. He told me he went to a certain house for Shabbos. And he would spend Shabbos with a young couple. He wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock in the morning, he has to go to the bathroom. So he goes to open his door, and his door is locked from the outside. He's trying to blow the door, can't get the door open. He starts knocking quietly, nothing, not a sound. He's sitting there knocking, he's waiting, somebody knocks, waiting. An hour passes, 3 hours pass. 8 o'clock, all of a sudden he hears click, the door is unlocked from the outside. What happened? The person he was staying with, the man, decided that he wants to go daven at the Nate's Binyan, which is beautiful. But if he leaves the house, that creates a halachic problem of yichud between the guest and the wife. So obviously the logical thing is incarcerate your guest in his room and go off and be a tzaddik, right? That's a religious Mr. Magoo. Either daven nates or don't daven nates. Don't lock guests into, that's what I mean by religious mystery. You're so focused on what you're doing, you forget you've got tunnel vision. So it takes a certain maturity to know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And that's what's symbolic about the guy. At 50 years old, you close the gates, meaning you have the control over the religious fervor of the 25-year-old or 30-year-old. At 50 years old, you're a little more mature about things. And you'll see gentlemen in life in general, even independent of religion, you just see raising a family also. The older you get, you realize don't make an issue out of everything and don't push it. It's not a disaster. Everything when you're younger with kids, it looks like a disaster. As you get older, let it go. It'll pass. They're also people. They also don't want to get messed up. No, just relax a little bit. Take a sedative. Just relax. At the age of 50? No. At the age of 50. No. Physical age of 50. Yeah, no. I'm only using it's only a, what do you call it? It's only a symbolic idea. It doesn't mean they're individuals. These are staying at the age of 50. It's just you're right. It's just a symbolic idea. Okay.
Like somebody shouldn't conscientiously try to step back from Judaism at 50 if they still feel
No, don't step back from Judaism. Never step back from Judaism. Just get yourself under control. That's all. There's a person has to. That's why it's important to have a rabbi, have somebody who is a mentor to let you know when you're getting a little too. The classic example is a guy trying to kiss the Sefer Torah and elbows you in the head on the way. Guy's trying to kiss. I have to kiss the Torah, yeah, but there are also people in your way. You don't know. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter once said, the great founder of the Musar movement, he said, a person in his haste, could be running to do his mitzvah, and he tramples the entire world on the way. Right, and it's an important thing to remember. You have to remember there are people in your world as well. Now, obviously, if it's a halacha, it's a halacha. You can't compromise halacha for the sake of people. But you have to sometimes work it out. You have to figure out how to do it. There's a yeshiva guy, a beautiful story. A yeshiva guy, his father had passed away, and his mother wanted him to come home for the Yom Kippur davening, and daven in their local Balabata Shishol. And the son said to his Rosh Yeshiva, he said, I really want to stay in the yeshiva davening for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, one for a spiritual davening, then when he's going to find it home. And the Rosh Yeshiva said, yeah, but you have a mitzvah to honor your mother. That's a Torah command. He said, yeah, but my spiritual davening, he says, when you do a mitzvah, that's spirituality. Spirituality isn't how you feel. Spirituality isn't what you determine spirituality. Spirituality is when you do the right thing, then you're being spiritual. Spirituality is doing the dishes on Motzei Shabbos is one of the most spiritual things you will ever do, gentlemen. Sorry. It's one of the most spiritual things you should do. Whether you will do it or not, I don't know. But to do the dishes on Motzei Shabbos for your wife is a very spiritual thing. To watch the kids on Rosh Hashanah morning because your wife wakes up with a fever, instead of going to shul and davening, is one of the most spiritual things you will ever do. You're not going to feel good about it necessarily. That's spirituality. To get up in the morning and smile and say good morning to your wife is spirituality. That's spirituality. To do what you feel good about, feeling good is not an indication in this religion. We hope you feel good. We hope you feel good doing it. Wow, I feel good. I really want to do that mitzvah. That's why sometimes people confuse priorities. Somebody abandons a wife whose husband comes home on a Thursday night. Just imagine this scenario. Wife comes home, husband comes home Thursday night. This is a standard scenario in many religious homes. Husband learns late Thursday night. Traditionally, yeshivas have a mishmar, and you stay out late. So you come home at about 11:30 at night, 12 o'clock at night, even 1 o'clock at night. You walk over to the refrigerator, and you open up the refrigerator, and there's a fresh pie in the refrigerator. Right? Now, whoa, that's a good 11:30 p.m. snack. And as you reach for this apple pie, the voice of the one, your wife, I don't know how they know this. She was in a heavy slumber, and I open up the refrigerator, and all of a sudden her voice, don't touch the pie. It's for the Goldstein's Kiddush this week in shul. And they catch you right, 3 inches. How they do that? She's in a slumber. She looks like she's absolutely drugged. Don't touch the way to go. So you're standing there frozen, and so you pull, okay, so what can I eat? Well, there's some crackers and pie is calling me, right? So now, what? No, let me for the Goldstein's Kiddush. Oh no, that's terrific. I won't get anywhere near the table because Okay, so what should a wife do if she wants to be certain? What should a wife do? Not what will a wife do? She should say, eat the pie, I'll bake another one tomorrow. Because her first responsibility is to her husband. What should you, the husband, do? You, the husband, just say, banish the thought. I don't want to inconvenience you. You both have obligations. But her obligation is, because she wants to I want to do a mitzvah. I want to help the Goldsteins. Oh, you want to do a mitzvah? You want to do a mitzvah? If you want to do a mitzvah, help me. I'm the husband. That's the biggest mitzvah a woman has. You want to do a mitzvah? The mitzvah is not helping the guy down the block because he asks you, can you help me? I need help jump starting my car or moving some stuff out of my apartment. The biggest, your wife says, yeah, but I need help with the kids. That's your mitzvah. It's a bigger mitzvah because that's your first obligation. And so, but nobody's going to know about that, right? When you're home helping with the wife and kids, you don't get any awards for that. Nobody pats you on the back. Nobody says, "Ooh, what a tzaddik you are," right? You're what do you call it? There's no prestige in that. Yeah, that's why it's so difficult. But that's your obligation. That's spirituality. That's ruchnius. I heard about a guy who kept coming. A guy was studying in Kollel. You know what Kollel is? Where married men study. And there was a period he started coming late to the Kollel. And the head of the kollel said to him, Chaim, why are you coming late every morning? He says, Rabbi, I'll tell you the truth. I know a woman, she's alone with 6 kids. And every morning I help her out. He says, wow, that's beautiful. Wow, what a mitzvah. He says, who's this woman? He says, my wife. That's the priority in life. There's another guy comes, a charity collector, one of these Shabbos organizations. He comes, a very wealthy man. He says, listen, there's a poor family in town they're really hurting, we could use a serious donation. He says, sure, Rabbi, no problem. He pulls out a check. He says, who should I make the check out to? He says, your brother. You're busy helping the world. You're busy helping the world. Yeah, but what about the nearest and dearest? And that one doesn't feel as good. Right. I don't care about your feeling. I hope you feel good. That's not the determining factor in Judaism. And the irony of life is, by the way, when you do the dishes Motzei Shabbos, and when you do stay home and help your wife and kids, and when you write a check for your brother, you do feel good afterwards. Because then you know inside that you did the right thing. It's only getting there and getting through it, because usually you do it, and then that last dish, you just throw it down. All right, I did it. You just blew the whole thing.
Do it when you're on your way to go do it.
Yeah, right. That's also, but it's the worst, and that's the biggest mitzvah you have. Okay, now I want to show you another point here. Take a look at Perek Yud Pasuk Beis, page 782. By Daber Hashem al Moshe Lamar, page 782, it's 5 lines from the top. Asei lecha shtei chatzotzros kesef, make 2 trumpets of silver. Miksha ta'asosam. Miksha means that I don't know how he translates it.
Hammered out.
Hammered out. Miksha means that they should be made out of one piece. You start with one piece of one block of material and you hammer it out, as opposed to taking individual pieces and putting them together. That's why he calls hammered out, because if you want to make trumpets out of one block, you're going to hammer it out till you make the trumpet. Okay, and there's the one.
Get the hammer inside.
Well, it's a skill. It's a craftsmanship. Whatever you're using, a chisel, whatever you're using. But you're starting with one block of material. You're making this trumpet. The hayu l'cha mikra ha'eda. You're going to use it to summon the congregation. Ulamasa esamachanos, and to cause the camps to travel. That means when Moshe Rabbeinu wants to call people together. I mean, you stop and think. You've got among the Jewish people in the desert. If the men were between 20 and 60. There were 600,000 men. And then you have the parallel amount of women, and you have older people, younger people. So the estimation is there were 2.5 million people there. And now you want to call, how long a camp like that takes up? You know how wide the Jewish camp was? 12 mil. 12 mil is apparently, it's a good few miles of tents and camps and people. 2.5 million people is a lot of people. In most cities in the United States, I think there are only 9 cities in the United States that have over 1 million people within the city limits. In China, there are about over 50. Right? But in the United States, there are 9 cities that have over 1 million people. 1 million people is a lot of people. And you're talking about 2.5 million people of the Jewish people. Now you want to call them all together. How do you call them all together? So you sound the trumpets. And there were different sounds that were made for different, if you want the people to assemble, if you want the elders to assemble, if you want to give a signal to start traveling, different types of sounds that were made with the trumpet. That's the what do you call it? That's the basic idea, and that's what the Torah is going to describe here. If you blow one trumpet, if you blow 2 trumpets, that's what goes on in this paragraph over here. Now, I want you to see a Rashi, a very pertinent idea here. Top line. Asei lecha, make for yourself trumpets. So top line of Rashi. Sheyu tokin lefanecha kamelech. They should blow the trumpets in front of you like a king. Moshe Rabbeinu, according to many commentaries, he had the status of the king of the Jewish people. The pasuk says, "Vayehi b'shurun melech." If you ever heard the words in the pasuk, in Yeshurun, which is the Jewish people, there was a king. Now, look at the next line of Rashi. Asei lecha mishelcha. The material should come from you. You provide the material. And then Rashi says like this: Asei lecha. What is the Torah emphasizing? Make for yourself. Why does the Torah just say asei? Make trumpets. Why asei? Make for you trumpets. Obviously, the word lecha has to be teaching something. Says Rashi, Ata osa umishtamish behem. You make them and make use of them. V'lo acher. The next leader isn't going to make use of your trumpets. The next leader is going to have his own set of trumpets. He doesn't use your trumpets. Now, what does that mean? Moshe Rabbeinu is the leader of the people. He has trumpets to call out to the people. The next leader uses a different set of trumpets. So one of the common explanations here I've heard from several different areas, several different sources. Every generation has its own message, and a leader needs to know how to communicate with his people. The trumpets that one leader uses, the sound one leader makes, is not the same sound that another leader makes. Every generation has a different thing that makes it tick. When the 70s, let's go back even earlier than that, let's go back to the 1800s. What was the drive of the generation? Intellectual accomplishment. Jews were being drawn away from Judaism through intellectual temptation, what's called the Enlightenment. There's wisdom out in the secular world as well. What do you have to get involved in Judaism for? What are you studying the Talmud for if there's so much wisdom out there? In the 70s, it was philosophy. People searching for truth, for philosophy. Give me something in life. Materialism had worn out because America became very America already. Materialism had already reached its zenith. And then you had the age of the hippies and the yippies, right? You know, the hippies and the yippies came along. The hippies' motto was do your own thing, man. As long as your own thing is wearing blue jeans and a pullover shirt, then do your own thing. If my own thing is wearing a suit and tie, that doesn't count. Do your own thing, man, as long as your own thing is my thing. That was really underlying it. So the hippies were fighting against the materialistic establishment. They would go into the hippies would go into a store and they would shoplift a jar of peanut butter. But they said, we're liberating the peanut butter. They would liberate the peanut butter. They would liberate a brick of cheese. We're liberating it from the establishment pigs. That was the motto of the hippies. In our generation, our generation, I believe that the call to the people is that hedonism doesn't work. The call to the people nowadays is just show me something, sanity. We live in a world of insanity. Show me sanity in this world. When a girl could say to a friend of hers, when I date a guy, I ask myself, is this the man I want my children to spend every other weekend with? Right? That's a world of insanity. That's a world of insanity. It's a world that's falling apart. It's a world that's drug infested. It's an immorality infested. So the message of the generation that calls out in one generation, it's not the same message. A leader has to know the language of his faith. A rabbi has to know the language of his congregants. What is the message? What are these people searching for? What makes them tick? That's the different trumpets, the symbolism of the different trumpets. Moshe Rabbeinu calls out with his trumpet. The next leader, you're going to have a different challenge in a different generation. In our generation, it's technology generation. How do you get people away from their machines? How do you get people away to give up to people who shouldn't walk around doing this, even when they don't have the machine in front of them? Do you know that there's...
You used to look at people.
What's that?
You used to look
at people. I see nowadays, used to be a guy's talking to himself. You thought the guy was a mishuganer. Nowadays, the guy's not talking to himself, he's a mishuganer. Half the time I get into a cab, the cab driver is talking. I say, you Ken, ma? And he's not talking to me. He's talking, he's got the thing in his ear. He's talking to somebody else on the phone. People walk the streets talking. I don't feel so bad if I memorize Mishnayos in the streets anymore. You can talk to yourself. I could practice a shir or a talk that I'm going to give. I could practice talking to myself. Not self-conscious. Why? Everybody talks to themselves nowadays. It's a different generation. It's a different generation. That's the message of the Torah. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. We have to talk tomorrow a little bit about the traveling.